Good morning, welcome to session 6, which is our final session of the year. Time flies. It hasn't been easy doing it remotely, and I wish I was with you live, but I hope that you've been able to get some things from the work we've done this year, and it's helping you think about how you want to build the future. Our backcloth theme is working together to build a better world. And I didn't realise 2-3 years ago how timely that type of label was going to be, because we need to do it desperately. As we go into this last session, I want to provide you, as always, with the space to pull your plans together in readiness, I hope, for how you can move your school forward post-COVID, post-pandemic, to make it even better over the next 2 or 3 years. And as always, you will be at different points because you've had different challenges to deal with throughout the last 2 years. So some of you will be further down the line with your thinking than others. But let's see where we go today. The areas I'd like us to cover would be the update on national developments. That will be very brief today, because to tell you the truth, I can't see anything that the government can offer which is of any use whatsoever. So I'm reluctant to waste any time asking you to think too much about developments when I don't think they know where they're going or what they're doing. I guess the backcloth will be the white paper that was published a while back, but there's no further news on that. So we'll look briefly at the national updates. Then I just want to remind you about the characteristics of high-performing organisations, because I think they're a good backcloth to why I've been asking you to do and look at some of the things that I have been asking. Then part of moving forward is those 5 strategic priorities, which, along with helping children who fell behind during the pandemic to catch up, I think they are the 5 strategic priorities that, if you can really develop and embed those with the staff engaging in them in the right spirit. Now that's a big one. With staff engaging with them in the right spirit, then I think they're the 5 areas that will help you build a better school community, your part in building a local better community, and our contribution to building a better world. Of course, that's the talk. Part 4 is about how do we deliver the mission and the vision, and that's about getting the workforce on board. And I hope you've been already giving some thought to that. It's about aligning the workforce so you've got everybody pulling in the same direction. And then just a little bit of time to pull that together. So that's the plan, space for you to firm up your plans for, I like this phrase, elevating what we do, because some of the government policies actually are not really elevating. They are out of date focus, to do with memorization, to do with tests and exams. And we're at a time now where more and more companies are saying, we've lost confidence in qualifications. We are less interested in whether people have got degrees or what exams they've got. We need another set of skills. So I think we can elevate what we do, build it around a firmer moral purpose, and build something better. And again, that needs to be paced. So we're talking about the next 24, 36 months. So that's the plan. Let me just take a few minutes on the national updates. The only one I want to look at today would be just to remind you where we are with academies. They're the raw scores. Academisation has been on the agenda since 2015, and we know that it will remain on the agenda. Even if the current government loses the next election, Labour will still pursue the policy that they started, simply because there is no turning back with academies. and we're pretty much up to 10,000 schools already academies. But the more significant one is this one. I show you this really every time we come together. And if you look at the total academy column, third from the right, then you can see that primaries have now reached very nearly 40%. That's quite significant, 39.2, 40%. Mainstream secondary have now reached the 80%, which is the tipping point. 80% of secondary schools are already academies. Special schools, they've really increased a lot in the last 9 months, and special schools are up to 43%, which the overall total in the bottom square of that column says that 46.1% of schools are academies, compared with 53.9, 54%, which are still LA maintained. Those two figures are getting very close, and you can see when you look at the numbers of schools in the pipeline to become academies that we're very close to being over 50% of schools being academies. So academies won't go away. However, the last thing we always look at is the size of the trusts, because the government made an appalling fundamental mistake when it said standalone academies will be fine, because the other part of that, and that's not me being detrimental to standalone academies, the other part of that is we knew that common sense says schools need to be collaborating. Partnerships of schools will be the future. We could see that 10, 15 years ago, but the government didn't, and as a result of that, a lot of schools moving forward independently became standalone academies, and good luck to them. I'm not being critical of that move whatsoever, but it means moving into partnerships where perhaps 8 or 10 schools are working together is going to take longer. That's why the government talks about all schools being part of family of schools by 2030. And you can see there, just looking down that last column, 52% of the 50% of schools which are academies are standalone. You've seen recent increases in the numbers looking between 3 and 5 to work together, and 6 and 10. And they would be the figures really 6 and 10 and 11, 10 to 12 that the government would be eager to look at. For the last 15 years, I've been saying to you, less concerned about whether you're an academy or not. That'll be a result of a government policy, but I'm really eager that you should be working in partnership with other schools. So we are moving towards academies. You can see that happening, but the foundation for it is collaboration with other schools, partnership, working. Apart from academisation, let me just remind you of what I've sent out to you with the slides, that those that went to the head teacher. There were 2 documents, both on Ofsted. I thought they were very helpful notes on Ofsted. I sent out this time a repeat of the one that went out last time, just in case you had mislaid it. And then along with that, a further set of guidance questions. And they not only strengthen, I think, your preparation for Ofsted, but they also strengthen your own internal quality assurance QA processes. So I think the only 2 things to mention to you in terms of this national update this time that are worth thinking about is academisation, partnerships, and anything coming out of the Ofsted questions that's relevant for you. I'm not dwelling on this, so I'm only going to give you 5 minutes of reflection time. Just take a 5 minutes mull on what are the implications for you as senior leaders, for your governing body and trustees and for your school over the next 12, 24, 36 months? And what action, looking forward, what action, if any, may be sensible to take over the next 6, 12, 24 months as you prepare the school for the future? I think the key bit for me there is we know that good leaders are proactive and they're good at forward thinking. So 6, 12, 24 months, where do you think you may need to be or want to be with academisation, partnerships and perhaps 1 or 2 dimensions of Ofsted? Have 5 minutes and then you'll hear me once again. Excuse me, please. Thanks. Excuse me please, welcome back. Part 2, let's look at, as a backcloth to you pulling your plans together, the characteristics of high-performing organisations. We've looked at this previously, but it was a good while back. But I put them on the agenda because I want you to see that what I'm asking you to do and encouraging you to do is actually rooted in the research of best practice organisations. Best practice organisations far wider than just education, far wider than the narrow thinking of government. First of all, the Jaworski quote, which you've seen dozens of times, but I think it's wonderful. It does me good to be reminded of it, because that's what you're about. Leadership is about learning how to shape the future. And that's what you are doing. As senior leaders, you are shaping the future. But good leadership exists when people are no longer victims of circumstances, but participate in creating new circumstances. Therefore, your job is about creating new realities. As you do this, though, remember that we want those new realities to be better both for the children but also for the workforce. And that links to high-performing organisations, because the 5 things that they do particularly well would be, first of all, they have that clarity of purpose and mission. People know what they are about. And in many ways, that purpose and mission doesn't change that much. But occasionally, it needs to be revisited, because if life has changed, society has changed, the needs of the people organisations serve change, they may need just to revisit and update the mission. I've asked you to be thinking about, is your mission one of depth? Does it have a purpose which is to do with a moral dimension in a world which is a mess and needs changing? Alongside of that, therefore, they set their sights on the right vision and the right priorities. The challenge is the vision for 3 to 5 years on. If your school was going to be even better than it is, how would you want it to be in 2, 3, 4 years' time? If you were walking around it, how would it be similar? How would it be different? What would people be doing? What would they not be doing? What's your vision for the curriculum? What's your vision for pedagogy? What's your vision for the organisation as a whole? Without vision, you shall perish, says the proverb. So vision and priorities are important. And then they treat their customers right. Well, okay, 20 years ago we wouldn't have liked thinking that we serve customers, but we're talking here about the children we serve, the community we serve, the parents and carers that we serve. It's about treating other people properly, but also they treat their own people right. It's about getting the best out of people. How well do we enable and encourage and coach people so that they want to come to work and enjoy the job, but they also want to keep developing as professionals? And then the final one would be they get their key processes right. And for us, I guess the key processes are curriculum development and curriculum delivery, the quality of teaching and learning. But that learning is not the narrow curriculum, it's the broad curriculum to do with equipping children for life. So they would be the 5 main priorities, and I believe that they are generic to any good organisation, and they are as relevant to schools and trusts as to any other organisation. So just look at those and just embed them in your mind, because we want to, in each of those areas, move them forward. ensure that the purpose and mission is relevant to 2020 and what's happening in the world and society. But we have to have a vision in order to deliver that mission. We need to know what we're aiming at 2 or 3 years on. And in order to deliver the vision, we have to get the priorities right. And then our values say, let's treat children, parents, the community right. And also critical is, let's make sure we treat our own people right. And that's about creating the conditions where people want to come to work, where they enjoy the job, but they also recognise that they're making a worthwhile difference. How do you do that? You have something to do with your mission, which isn't just about tests and testing and exams. I know I revisit that regularly, but remember it was secondary heads who said we have become nothing but exam factories. Every time I say that, it saddens me. We are about the whole child, and we're not just equipping them for the next stage of education. We are equipping them for life. So we want staff to realise that that is what we're doing. And if we get that right, we're playing our part in building a better world. And then as technology, artificial intelligence comes, then we need to make sure our curriculum is reviewed and updated, not too frequently. Reviewing your curriculum every 2 or 3 years, I think, is quite sufficient. You don't want to always be involved in curriculum development. And then it's about pedagogy, thinking ahead to where you want to be with that. Just have 5 minutes checking out, do they make sense to you? Because that's really the backcloth to what I've been encouraging and pushing you towards. Have 5 minutes. See you then. Leading organisations, therefore, high-performing organisations, therefore, are proactive, innovative, and they get ahead. And they get ahead by moving forward in a way that you as professionals know makes sense as you prepare children, the workforce, and the community for the future. I think the government are unable to do that. They are so fundamentally appalling in the quality of their thinking and the quality of their policies. In fact, I find it difficult to accept that they seem to be doing nothing but fighting for survival, what's good for them, rather than what's good for the whole. Wow! To say that about a government, that they're more concerned with them and their shenanigans than actually their part in building a better community. How sad that is. On the one hand, it's sad, but on the other hand, it says, let us seize the vacuum that they create and move your schools forward in a way that there's no going back, because it's common sense, good practice. So the vision is important. And if you wait to be acted upon, remember, you will be acted upon. I love that. Get ahead of government policy. Makes it more difficult for them then to change it. Secondly, remember that lovely African proverb that we've looked at. Tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it. How lovely. Tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it. With that in mind, that's why vision is so important. But it also requires us why we need a leadership team who are skilled in the two phases of leadership, both the strategic and the operational. And that's why, pardon me, leadership can no longer just be one person, because no one person will have all of these skills. We need a team of people who between them have the skills, first of all, for phase one, which is the visionary, strategic, longer-term thinking. And that requires people who have the ability to see the bigger picture and to think and plan strategically. How will the world be in 3 to 5 years' time? 5 to 10 years' time? Where are we moving where there's no return, so we need to adapt to it? They need to clarify, shape, and embed in people's hearts and minds the mission and the vision. They need to then define and embed the values and the right priorities. And remember, never to underestimate the importance of values. One of the reasons why, as I've shared with you before, I think the world is in a mess is we've lost our values. That we may stick them on the wall, or we may have them in the prospectus, or we may have them in companies in the adverts, but values link to the behaviours, and the behaviours need to be those which build a better world. And then the other thing they do is recognise the need to establish partnerships and collaborative working. You can no longer work in isolation, even though you may like to. That's why for heads working together to bringing schools together is so important. So that's the strategic role. But if you're going to deliver the vision and the mission, then you need to have the means by which it is implemented and delivered. So operational delivery requires getting the organisational structure right, the structure, the culture, the ethos. That ethos needs to be in nearly all successful organisations around teams, teamwork, and team leadership. Therefore, distributed leadership becomes more and more important. In order to get the best out of people, we want to partner people for performance, but also fulfillment. So it's about how do you work with people and how do you build a culture that engages, enables and energises people. Engages, enables and energises the workforce, enables, engages and energises the children. With those longer term strategic and the delivery in place, then they're the prerequisites for delivering the mission, which for us, of course, in schools and education is high quality teaching and learning. So I guess my bit there would be, how good are you, not only as a leadership team, but also particularly in phase one there, with your governing board and trustees, of getting the vision and the strategy right? And then how well in phase two have you as leaders got the structure, the teamwork and the partnering people for performance right, so that people enjoy the job because they feel engaged, enabled and energized? I think we will come back to that a little bit later, not at the moment, because that also links with a reminder of how important that strategic thinking is. And if you think about that diagram there, it's a reminder really that in any organisation, if you carry on doing what you've always done, then actually you start to lose it. That's why we have to build for the future ahead of time before we start falling away. And I guess you can see people in society, organisations in society, who didn't think technology would catch on, or because they didn't like technology, they chose to turn a blind eye to it. And then you reach a point where, if you haven't cracked that or realised that that's the way forward, your organisational effectiveness begins to fall away. So what the vision is about in that second curve is looking at where you want to be alongside of where you may need to be in 2 to 3 years' time. The difference between the wants and the needs would be that, yeah, we want this as a school community because we can see that it's good for the children and it makes sense. The need is sometimes government will put in legislation which, even if we're not wild about, or Ofsted gets a bee in its bonnet over certain things, we may not be wild about that, but we need to cover ourselves. So it's about looking at what you want, but also realistically some of the things that may need to be in place. And all of that needs to be picked up in terms of the changing national picture to be as good as we can be for the pupils, for the workforce and the school community. We want to make sure that our vision and what we deliver is about change for the better. So vision alongside mission is hugely important. And that's why really I've been pushing this need to revisit and update those essential building blocks. You remember those, they're so important. They provide, if anybody came in from the outside or for people working within the organisation, you want them to be clear of the mission. You want them to understand where the school wants to be, the vision for 2 or 3 years on. You want them to understand this is the way we do things here, which is the values. And I think we need to be really strong on having an expectation that staff will model the values that this school stands for, because that's the way children will learn values most effectively, by learning them and seeing them modelled. And then that builds the ethos and the culture of the school. You obviously need also to have a rationale in place that allows people to see why you're doing what you're doing in the way that you're doing it. So that's about the context of the school, the needs of the community, the needs of the children. It's about the history of the school, and it's about how you see the future and how you see you can best meet the needs of the children and the community. That's the context and underpinning rationale. So you could respond comfortably, and any member of staff could respond comfortably to, I'll tell you why we're doing what we're doing in the way that we're doing it. It's because. That's the rationale. If you're going to deliver the vision, then obviously that won't happen unless you focus on the main improvement priorities. And that's why we've set out our 5. And all of those would be about taking our core purpose forward, our core activity, which is about high quality teaching and learning and assessment that allows a high quality curriculum to be delivered. And then, of course, the last one is to have quality assurance. Now, the secret with good internal quality assurance is that it works in a way that people can see as common sense and they find helpful. And they don't see it as something that you do to them as senior leaders, that you do it together in order to review what's working well, what's not yet working well, how we can enjoy the strengths, but also how we can move forward with those areas where individually and collectively we're not quite where we want to be. So again, I guess the progress you're making with that, I think, needs to be worked through before you begin moving some of these things forward so people can see the context. So let me just remind you, particularly if any of you are new to leadership, about what those terms mean. Remember, the mission or the purpose is our core reason for being. Any organisation's core reason for being, which normally doesn't change that much until sometimes you need, hang on, life has changed, we need to adjust the mission. The second one would be the vision, which, as I've said, is the picture of the future if your mission was being delivered. And that does change because it's more time-bound. And as you move towards that 3-year vision, then you begin to shape the vision for the next 3 years. Whereas for most of that time, if not all of that time, the purpose or the mission will remain unchanged. Why you do it and how you do it, that's the rationale. So that's the logic and the principles behind why you do what you do in the way that you do it. And then the final one is the values. The values are the principles and beliefs which underpin how you treat each other and the way that we do things here. And that's evidenced in the behaviours and actions of both the workforce and the children. Let me just spend 5 minutes talking a little bit about why I see these to be so important. And they are. But I've been pushing these, or rather than pushing, encouraging you throughout this year of our work together to revisit and update these 4 areas. Why? Well, I've spoken to you several times about the world being in a mess. And if it's in a mess, we either kind of roll over and think, oh, this is just dreadful, I'm going to switch off to it all and just survive. Or, as leaders, we think, I can't just roll over and give up. I mustn't opt out. We mustn't opt out. It's not okay to be an observer watching us spiral downwards as a society. We need to do our bit to try and make it better. And so I've been encouraging you to think about what will better look like. How can we show to the children and the workforce that we can do our bit to make sure things improve? Therefore, I think it's time for us to elevate what we do and what we achieve by working together to make an even bigger difference than we already do to children's lives and the lives of the community. But if we're going to do that, we need to show solidarity in pursuing the right things, the right thing. And I'm suggesting, and I'm hoping that you will be on board for this, that the time is right to ensure that your mission reflects a strong, moral and worthwhile purpose. I don't want to get caught up too much on the limitations of government thinking about the old league tables and the emphasis on tests and testing and on examinations, because I know for many of you, you've been doing things for the whole child for a long time. But I think we need to come out of our corner and start helping people recognise that a moral and worthwhile purpose is absolutely critical. And that, for me, that I've been encouraging you to think about, is we're not just preparing the child for the next stage of education. We have a focus on the whole child, and the cause with meaning is about equipping children for a fulfilled life in a complex world. Now, if they're going to have a fulfilled life in a complex world, we need to put values and relationships absolutely high on the agenda. We need to help children understand that happiness and fulfillment in life comes through people and with people. So I think we need to elevate what we do and to develop a new narrative about the importance of togetherness and solidarity. How do we do that? Well, I think we need to live life consistent with values and beliefs which focus on doing things which are worthwhile and good for everybody. We need to encourage pupils and remind the workforce that being the best we can be, not just for ourselves, but also for others. Because if we want to build a better world, we need to move from an emphasis on individualism, consumerism, and looking after self, to rebuilding community and rebuilding a collective society where we recognise that we are all in this together and divisions are unhelpful. Because in truth, we are bound together by our shared humanity. We are part of each other. Therefore, building a sense of belonging and community, I think, is part of building a better world. Society, togetherness, building relationships is important. That's why our sub-theme for all of our sessions this year has been working together to build a better world. I have no doubt that we as leaders of children and leaders of schools and partnerships are in a way in a position to play our individual and collective parts to help make this happen. So, you see, I don't think playing our part in building a better world is over-ambitious, because do you know that in some ways, if I just smile more at people I meet, if I just listen more to people I meet, if I reach out to overcome the differences between me and others, I start building that bridge, I start building that gap. I sometimes find when I read and hear, and it saddens me enormously, about divisions and hostility between different groups, I sometimes think, for me it doesn't make sense, because actually we are all one race, the human race. So division and antagonism and differences are things which should be understood. And I think that's the way, at simple level, we build a better world. But I think in terms of the curriculum, It's also about helping children understand the importance of relationships, the importance of friendships, the importance of kindness, doing things for other people, because again, we've touched on this several times, the more you do for others, actually, it does you good as well, providing you don't overdo it. And the more we are thankful for what we have, thankfulness is great for putting things in perspective. For those of you who are lucky enough to have, for those of you, us, who are lucky enough to have food in the belly, a roof over the head, people to love, people who love us, then be thankful for that. Because in many parts of the world and for many groups of people, it's not like that. So, winding that up, what I'm saying is that I think it's time for us to really work hard through the curriculum to play our part in building a better world, whether that's the world of the school, the world of the community, or society. That is the only way, solidarity, standing together, moving forward together, we can do our bit to build a better world. So I think, revisit, update these things in front of us here, the mission, the vision, the rationale, the values, and let's leave the government behind as it is preoccupied with itself, going around in ever-diminishing circles, focused only on the pursuit of power, winning the next election, or staying in power. It is so shallow that it's tragic. We can do better, and I think if we do, we will feel better. Where do you stand on those things? Do you think that what I've been saying is nonsense? Do you think, oh, good Lord, I wonder what he's on? Or do you think, no, we do have a role, playing our part in building a better world through building relationships, people, and moral purpose? Just have 10 minutes. I'll see you then. So, welcome back. And what I'm on about, therefore, is having a stronger moral purpose. Because having a worthwhile, stronger moral purpose has deeper meaning than the superficiality of what the government tends to do in setting targets, whether it's for the health service, that's about waiting lists, whether for many years for schools it was about tests and attainment. Whereas the stronger moral purpose, we're reminded by Fulham, is the best leaders have bold but realistic aspirations for the future, which are based on creating a school and or a partnership of schools, in which delivering on a mission which has a strong moral imperative, then it changes the lives of both the children and the workforce for the better. The children, because we're equipping them for life, and for the workforce because people feel we're doing something more worthwhile. That's why I remember we had a hemorrhage of secondary teachers leaving the profession a couple of years ago because I'm doing nothing else but getting people through exams, the exam factory syndrome. Whereas a strong moral imperative, says Fulham, enhances life for everybody. Taking that forward a little bit, then it's about involving people in something worthwhile and making a difference, which is a key area of individual and collective need. And the beliefs and values are the basis of the moral framework, because, as Matthew Syed said, without the right moral framework, societies and organisations cannot thrive. The decay we now see in the West is the result of us losing this. So just absorb that. He's saying there that we have lost our moral and values framework about how we treat each other and having shared goals about living in peace, equality, in a world of justice. That we have lost the idea of doing things which are good not only for self but also good for others. And what we've got is a culture of individualism. I'm all right, I'll do what I want. And he says that's at the heart of the decay and at the heart of a lot of the problems we have. So it's a reminder really that values matter. And then we are reminded by Fulham again that being human, most of us are prone to be drawn into something if it is personally and socially meaningful, something into which we could become deeply immersed. That's why some people, they get involved in causes, whether it's supporting sports teams, whether it's being part of a political active group, all of those things, being involved in things which are worthwhile. Because if you're involved in things which are personally and socially meaningful, Fulham says, people find a new and deeper meaning which enriches their existence. So for us in schools, the challenge is, as you take your school forward into this next phase, can you see by ways of elevating what we do and having a deeper moral purpose, which is about equipping children for life? Actually, if I start being part of that, and I can see as a member of staff that I'm contributing and making a difference to that worthwhile mission, then makes my life better, as well as making it better for the people around me. And if you think that is a bit of a challenge, just remember Nelson Mandela's lovely quote, "It always seems impossible until it is done." And I tell you why I love that quote. Imagine him sitting for all of those years on Robben's Island in isolation, thinking about how he wants to build a better world and overcome, as it was at that time, apartheid. It must have at times looked impossible. So he reached the conclusion that it always seems impossible until it is done. And I guess that's my challenge for you. I'm on your side. But let's elevate what we do. And if it seems a challenge, then let's work at it until it is done. So we finish this section looking at how will your mission and moral purpose reflect an even stronger emphasis on the whole child, on equipping children for a fulfilled life. I hope you've been working on that over the recent months, but again, I work in this vacuum, and because I'm not able to interact with you, I'm not sure whether you have found time for that or not. If you have, wonderful. This is about checking the progress and looking at the next steps. If you haven't, then the challenge is, when will you find the time? Where are you planning to find the time about elevating your mission and moral purpose so that it's not just the whole child, but for the next stage of education, it's about for life? Where are you with your thinking about a vision for the school, a vision for the curriculum, a vision for the children and the workforce? And in what ways will your vision and the school itself in 3 to 4 years' time be similar to how it is now or different from how it is now? And that's not just for the individual school, that's also for partnerships, formal and informal. What about values? Where are you on that journey of reflecting, thinking through, and perhaps changing the values that you wish to permeate the ethos of the school? Will they be the same values you've always had, or are there some values which over the last 12, 18, 24 months aren't official values, but you think they are so important that they need to be? And then, of course, where's your thinking on initial ideas for ensuring a greater buy-in by all the teachers and the workforce to the values of the school? Because they need to be able to live out and model those values. And how can you ensure the children understand the importance of values not only in school but in life and throughout their lives? So my question there would be, how can you become an even stronger values-led school? And then the last bit there would be, where are you with that rationale which underpins all that you do and how you plan to do it? How do you express that so it's understood by all of your stakeholders? The governing board, the trustees, the workforce, the children, their families, and the community. So in this last session, part of what we're doing is, this is the backcloth to the next 3 years. What progress have you made in putting these key bits of the jigsaw on the table and starting to fit them together in preparation for moving the school forward? Where are you now with these? And what ideas do you have for the next steps, for building better and going deeper? Have 20, 25 minutes. See you then. Well, welcome back. Let's just look at where you are with the 5 strategic priorities that we've had in front of us. Remember, you can only deliver the mission and the vision by working on the key development areas. And the ones we've had in front of us, as you know, are these. So along with helping pupils who have fallen behind, the 5 priorities that we've been looking at is building a rounded curriculum that will equip children for life. And as you do that, then putting an even greater emphasis on personal development. And in some ways, the next stage of that is absolutely logical. We were asked by the government, they knee-jerked into building character. And then later on, they knee-jerked into building resilience. And actually what we're saying is the greater emphasis on personal development also includes the rounded, the friendships, the building relationships, the enjoying and understanding differences between people, the development of skills which help understanding. Then the third one is, if we're going to build a better world or have a fulfilled life, then our values and our attitudes are critical to that. Therefore, taking values, attitudes and moral purpose to a deeper level in this next phase is important. And because of AI, because of all of the things to do with the way pedagogy will build on the best, but go forward in new areas, then you need to be thinking about shaping teaching and learning in readiness for the future. But all of that needs to be done in a way where teachers, at a time when the public sector is not being rewarded in the way that it should, teachers find other ways of actually enjoying the job by making a difference and being part of something which is worthwhile and part of an organisation that actually enjoys the company of the people they work with and build in fun, still allowed. So I'd like you to remind yourselves of the progress you've been making so far on these. What are your plans in relation to the next steps for each of these? But as you do that, I say each of those, but remember as you do that, the first 4 of those priorities are linked. So they kind of revisit and overlap with each other significantly. The first 3 are about the curriculum, and the 4th is to do with the means by which the curriculum is delivered. And the last one is about, a workforce who want to come into school and feel good about it. So let me give you 20 minutes on that, just to think about progress you've made on each of those and what are your plans for the next steps. Thanks. Okay, well, welcome back. The next thing I'd like us to look at is fine to be clear on the vision and the mission and all of those things, but if you're going to deliver it, it's not only through the priorities, but as we saw before, it's also about having the organisational structure right. So in terms of part 2, if you're going to deliver, then you need to make sure you've got the right structure, the right culture and ethos, and that has to be, in the modern age, built around teams, teamwork, distributed leadership, an area where most schools have made enormous progress. But it's also about partnering people for performance. We are in this together, and the best way that that can be delivered is by a leadership culture that engages, enables and energises. That's the way to deliver the mission, and that for us is high quality teaching and learning. So let's just remind ourselves how this develops. The starting point is distributed leadership, because Guy Claxton over a decade ago was saying that the head teacher has no choice but to be the leader of leaders. And that in turn reflects the changing role of the head over the last decade and the changing role of the senior team. And if the head is to be the leader of other leaders, then we need a leadership style, I would suggest. My caveat to this is it may be a different leadership style if you're turning a school around, but if you've got a school which is in the right direction and you want to take people to the next level, then the leadership style from the research of Taz Watson is to do with taking people with you. And it's about engaging, enabling and energising. Engagement is about working in a way where people want to be part of the mission and the vision. They want to be, for us in our terms, it would be want to be part of equipping children for life and want to be part of building a world where values and relationships and valuing people is seen as a priority, and encouraging people to be flexible, adaptable. So you draw them in. They want to be part of the organisation, what it stands for. Then enabling is that once people are clear on the mission and the vision, leadership's job is actually to create a work environment that helps people deliver, a work environment that supports performance and success. And then what I love about the Taz Watson work is all of that, of course, is the job of leadership also to help people feel energised, that it's not a drag coming into work, because we don't just focus on work. We recognise that just as we talk about the whole child, the leader's job is to think about the whole adult member of the workforce. So it's about energising people, helping people recognise the importance of being well in terms of the physical, the social and the emotional well-being at work. And in many ways, I think sometimes we can only be as good at work as we are in our personal lives, in terms of the physical, the social and emotional well-being. But I love that idea of leadership which energises, enables, and that follows on from engagement. And that links to good people and performance management and the alignment, which we've seen before. You want to have people in all parts of the organisation working together to define and achieve the purpose, the shared vision, the values, the priorities and expectations. So you have at school level the mission, vision, values, priorities and expectations, which then for each team needs to be interpreted, and each team will deliver their part of the vision, the mission, the values and the priorities. And then I, as an individual member within that team, need to play my part in delivering my share of the mission, the vision, the values and the agreed priorities. And then for senior leaders and middle leaders, they need to see how what their area of the organisation does fits into what other people are doing as well. So we work together to get that alignment. And because teams have become so much more important, you will recognise that this diagram emphasises the idea of teams, key teams led by team leaders. But the important bit for me is that dotted line around the senior leadership, senior management team. Their partnership with team leaders is absolutely critical, because you need that whole group of senior and middle leaders pulling in the same direction, particularly at a time of change. You want everybody pulling in the same way to move towards the updated and more enlightened vision and mission. And as we think about this team culture, not all teams will be at the same point. If you look at this diagram, the working group, for example, they're not a team, but they don't claim to be a team. I used to think that perhaps some of the old governing bodies used to be like that. And then down the bottom there, you've got a team who call themselves a team, but in fact they're not a team. What would happen there is there would be no clear agreed vision and mission. They would be pulling in different directions. They would be undermining each other. In many cases, they can't separate out the personal from the professional. And, excuse me smiling, but actually we're filming this in June, in the week where the cabinet of the government have absolutely shown themselves to be pulling in different directions. Pseudo team. They need to be a real team. The potential team has the potential to deliver on the three characteristics of real teams: clear goals, strong performance orientation, and mutual accountability. That's a lovely one, you know. If you think of the good sports team, think of a good team that you watch or have been involved in. Then to what extent are they clear goals, want to do well, strong performance orientation, but also they don't blame each other if it goes wrong because they're mutually accountable. And then in addition to that, the high-performing team has consistency, and they're all still developing to become better. Let me just get you to think about where some of your key teams are on this curve. As you move your school forward, who are some of your key teams, and who are those who have clear goals, strong performance orientation, mutual accountability? In fact, why don't you just individually, without sharing your perceptions with each other, just imagine you were in the British Library reading room and you weren't going to talk for a few minutes. Just think about where some of your key teams are on that curve. And then I'll give you 10 minutes to discuss that, because you will become an even better school, one team at a time and one person at a time. And that's the real skill of being able to see where teams are, which teams need support, and which teams are so good that you can give them greater autonomy, because you know they will pick it up and run with it. I said do it in silence for the first few minutes, but that's an error. Just quickly agree the teams you're going to look at, and then take a few minutes individually to mark on the curve where you think they are. And I'd like you to do that separately, because you will bring different perceptions. And if one person moves too quickly with their judgment, it may influence others. And what we want is openness. So quickly decide some of your key teams. Where are they on that curve? Which teams? And then individually, where are they? And then share that. I guess in total, 15 minutes. See you then. Welcome back. And as you come out of that exercise, just remember what I said about the importance of teamwork between the senior leaders and the so-called middle leaders, because you want consistency at all levels of leadership, moving the school towards the agreed and elevated mission and vision. And we remind ourselves of that being picked up in the 2019 Ofsted Inspection Handbook. Research suggests that leadership and management can be highly effective when it's shared by different individuals and distributed across different levels, different areas of the school or the partnership. Inspectors will look at the work of head teachers, senior leaders, subject leaders and others with leadership and management roles when reaching that judgment. So we very much are into, and have been for a number of years, distributed leadership. But this reminds us of the need to think about how well you're building leadership capacity, who are your key teams and your key team leaders currently, and how effective are they? It reminds us to think about how effective, as you move the school forward, is the current partnership between your senior leadership team and your key middle leaders and subject leaders. The stronger that partnership, the better. Then the third one is, we can start this today, but you need to follow it through if you haven't done it recently, is your current structure of teams and teamwork and team leaders how you want it to be in the future as you deliver this agenda for change? So as you think about the vision for 2 to 3 years on, have you got the structure right to help you achieve that? If not, in what ways may it need to be different? And then the last one is, what ideas do you have at this stage for enabling your middle leaders, your team leaders and their teams to become even more effective in their role as agents of change? Because you as senior leaders are agents of change. And this is reminding us that if we're going to get that alignment of the workforce and the alignment of leaders, then helping them be effective as agents of change and delivering the vision of the trustees and the senior leadership and the agenda for change that's been identified, they need to be part of that. Let me give you 20 minutes. Like all of these discussions, you may need longer. I remind you of when we used to meet live, then frequently I'd take the morning session and many of you would stay on in the afternoon and follow these ideas through. At least that was the plan. What you actually did, I don't know. But you do need time to follow some of these things up. On a good day, I'm the catalyst for your thinking. But as always, you are the people who do the hard bit, making it happen. See where you get in 20 minutes on those 4 questions. See you then. Well, welcome back. And clearly what we've been talking about is building leadership, developing the potential of leadership. And that's all about getting the best out of people. And remember, you get the best out of people by doing things with people and not doing things to people. And the stronger a member of staff, member of your workforce, then the more important it is to do things with them. Because actually, if you do things to them, when they're really good, they will get a bit hacked off, very likely. So partnering for performance is leadership. We are reminded that leadership is a partnership that involves mutual trust between two people who work together to achieve common goals. If I'm not so strong as a middle leader in your school, you will give me more direction and more coaching. If I was a very strong team leader, curriculum leader, you would give me more autonomy and space because you'd be more confident to let me get on with it and deliver. So leadership, in that final paragraph, leadership shifts back and forth between these two key people. That's what good line management and coaching is about. Both parties play a role in determining how things are done. So getting the best out of people is critical. And all of that links to that part of emotional intelligence which is concerned with creating a climate in the school, the partnership, that supports success while improving personal and professional quality of life. That's why that diagram we looked at earlier about energizing is so important. You want a climate and a culture where people want to come to work because they enjoy it and they enjoy the people they work with. And that has implications for job satisfaction. That's why the style of leadership of senior and middle leaders working effectively around engaging, enabling and energizing is so important. Pulling this area together, what action, if any, will you need to take when the time is right, because you're all at different points of the journey, to get all of your workforce on board for taking the school or the partnership of schools forward in a way which will deliver the mission, the vision, the values and priorities that you have been planning and still are shaping and planning with the support of the governing board or the trustees. This is where we want to be. So this question is about what are you doing to get the workforce on board? Or what are you planning to do to get the workforce on board? That's such an important question. How best, as you do that, how best can you win the hearts and minds of the governing board, the trustees? Have you already done that? If not, what will you do? And the same for leaders at all levels. What are you doing to help them understand we are building better, we're being more ambitious in terms of the mission. We want a mission that is morally sound, more worthwhile than some of the things that the government requests. What are you doing to get the teachers and all of the workforce on board so that they want to be engaged and feel motivated to do what needs to be done? And then, what thoughts at this stage do you have regarding the best way to move things forward? What, if anything, do you plan to do this term to start engaging people if you haven't yet started? Or if you have already started, what further things will you do to engage in order to make life better and more meaningful for both the children and the workforce? That's an important discussion. Coming to the final stage of this term and this programme, what actions do you want to firm up? Have 20 minutes and I will see you then. Thanks. Welcome back. Just for the conclusion and thinking about the next steps, building on what you've already just been discussing. Remember the context that when times were tough, and during COVID they were, perhaps the best we could do individually and collectively, personally and professionally, was about survival. But from survival, we then think about, and you will have done this over the years, doing things better. And that's where the school improvement movement kicks in. But the third stage, and I think this is what this post-COVID period is about, is not only doing things better, but doing better things. And therefore, that for an example of that would be, instead of looking at what are we doing to prepare children for the next stage of education, we're looking at what are we doing to play our part in equipping them for life. What are we doing in terms of putting a greater emphasis on personal development of friendships, relationships? Fulfillment comes through people. What are we doing to help them understand that we have more in common with people than differences, and how important mutual respect and collaboration is? Doing better things. And then using technology to best advantage to take teaching and learning forward. Doing better things. And if we get some of those skills in place, then that's when we begin, including getting the values right, to play our part in building a better world, whether it's the world of the school, of our families, of the community, or society. I think that's what this programme has been about, helping us on the journey of moving that way. So anything further that you may just want to jot down in the next 5 minutes in terms of what ideas do you take from the session as you prepare for the future? Is there anything that you haven't covered? Are there any actions that you may want to take in the remainder of this school year to position the next stage of moving forward in September more effectively, as well as those things that during the next year you plan to do to achieve your mission and your vision for 2 to 3 years on? Have 10 minutes and I will see you then. Thanks. Okay, well, welcome back. That's the last time you'll hear that phrase for a while. In conclusion, there are a number of things that I would want to do. First of all, just to say that it will be good when you can get back to doing these things in the same room, in the same way, rather than working a little bit in isolation. And certainly for the facilitator of the sessions, which has been me, with some of you for some time, then it's about being able to see what's going on. And of course, when you do manage to get back live to these sessions, you then have the space and the enjoyment of meeting up with your colleagues, and that networking for support and ideas, shaping ideas, is so important. So I hope we will get back to live. I may work with a couple of groups, a couple of the larger groups, perhaps doing live. If we don't do live, then we'll just be thinking about whether to continue with these filming or the online work. But whether I'm working with you again or not, it's been a huge privilege working with you all. For some of you, I think I've been working with you or your predecessors for the best part of 20 years. And I do see that genuinely as an immense privilege. And in terms of these last 2 years, well, not live, but the letter people here in Tower Hamlets have really made it so much better than I had anticipated it could be. And so I would want to wish and thank the Letter Trust for managing all of the technical side of our work together, not just this year, but the last 2 years. And when I work with them, you need to know that I'm hugely impressed by their expertise and the goodwill and support which they give to this programme. That's why, for those of you who are thinking of academisation and are within range of the Letter Trust, they already have a number of years of experience in working in a trust and getting established. Also, I have to say, because they already have so many of these good values established, I'd encourage you to make contact with the Letter Trust. The CEO is Joe Franklin, but for me, I just want to thank at this stage the 2-3 people who have helped us make this programme happen. So good luck. We may or may not meet again, but as I say, a great privilege from me and my team. Thank you for participating, and when you reach the summer break, have a good one. Recharge the batteries. Bye.